The rain tapped at the windows of the little church hall on Rue des Flores as if it was trying to wash away the day, but inside, the air was thick with more than just humidity. There was a heavy silence hanging in that ill-lit room, broken only by the shifting of wooden chairs and the muffled coughs of people who refused to meet my eyes. I sat near the front, pretending to pick at a loose thread on my sleeve. I could feel my father's stare on the back of my neck burning. Every time I moved, the metal folding chair creaked, a sound even sharper than the whispers. Pastor Mauricio stood behind the lectern, smoothing the pages of his worn Bible as if the answer could be found somewhere amongst its stories. He looked at me, then at the row of dour faces, their expressions set in grim lines. My mother sat with her hands twisted in her lap, not looking at me or anyone. And so we ask ourselves, what is it to contribute to this community? The pastor's voice rumbled, the kind of deep that could silence children. For some of us our work is clear, some farm the land, some build. Some teach, he paused, his gaze lingering like a warning, but for others our purpose is less clear. I heard the snickering before I saw who it was. My cousin Rodrigo, leaning forward, lips curled, eyes bright with meanness. He'd been the first to say it out loud a week ago down at Bar Douze when I'd mentioned my commission. Data art, he had laughed, spitting out the words like old mate. What does that even mean, Felipe? Pretty pictures of numbers. Who's going to pay for that? Now he and two friends in work boots and worn jeans couldn't hide their amusement. I felt heat crawling up my neck, but I gripped the seat harder, willing myself to stay steady. It is a good thing to dream, but we must dream wisely, the pastor continued. Felipe has chosen a path unusual. He wishes to work with computers and images. Data art, as he says, his lip barely moved, but the mocking lilt was unmistakable. He believes this will support his future, support a family someday. The words caught the edge of a scoff behind me. I heard the scrape of a shoe. My younger sister Letitia sighed just loud enough for me to notice, embarrassment blossoming pink across her cheeks. I looked at her, searching for some support, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. The pastor cleared his throat, closing his Bible with a snap. We have all heard of children who wanted to be astronauts or football stars, but those are games. At some point, a man must choose a real life. The room was no longer a church. It felt like a courtroom. I wanted desperately to stand and shout that data was everywhere, that stories could be told in shapes and colors, that art could come from code. But I kept my anger boxed inside, trembling under my ribs. I'd explained it 100 times, and 100 times I'd been laughed out. All I could do was bite my tongue and wait for the storm to pass. When it was over, the congregation shuffled out, clustering near the door to exchange their verdicts. Grandma Iva, whose eyesight had faded but whose tongue had not, patted my mother's arm. He could always get a job at the prefectura like his cousin, steady, sensible work. I shoved my hands in my pockets, holding back words that would only make things worse. My father walked past me without a word, the tight set of his shoulders sealing me out. Letitia stayed, fiddling with her phone before finally meeting my eyes. Felipe, why, you're so smart. You could just get a normal job. Her voice was soft, pleading, but I could barely recognize my own sister in it. Rain poured outside, heavy and unrelenting. I left alone, cutting through puddles and stray dogs, every step home echoing with the knowledge that I didn't belong, not here, not the way they wanted me to. The following years twisted by slow and sharp. Savings ran dry and odd jobs filled the days. Data entry at a call center, temping for bureaucrats in grey offices where the only color was the glow of the monitor. At night, though, in my tiny studio apartment overlooking the polka dot tiles of Praça Osório, I fought with code and color, feeding on caffeine and doubt in equal measure. I sold my old bike to buy a faster laptop, scavenged cheap internet, and learned to ignore the hunger in my gut for one more week, one more month. Clients from São Paulo or London or Tokyo replied politely, then went silent or vanished. My submissions to digital showcases got copied on LinkedIn, then ghosted. My art, my shapes, my movement, my pulse remained words and code no one wanted to read. Calls from home became sparse. My mother's voice was always careful, as if any wrong syllable might cause me to break the connection. Maybe you need to come back, Philho, she'd say. Rodrigo heard of an opening at the post office. The rage simmered quietly, mixing with shame. I watched the lives of others unfold, marriages, houses, cars, baby showers. At night, scrolling endlessly, I saw new babies, fresh paint, white smiles. The city spun without me. Winter was especially cruel, with the apartment's thin windowpanes leaking cold fog that clung to my bones as I sat hunched over, face lit by blue screens, waiting for approval, validation, anything. Some nights my restraint wore thin. Once I smashed a mug against the wall when a promising deal evaporated. Another time I punched out an email to Rodrigo, long, wild sentences about the power of data, about how art was changing the world, about how Curitiba would someday see. But I never sent them. Day after day I bit down, kept at it. I stopped going home for feasts, skipped birthdays. It was easier that way, less chance for the old wounds to split open, less opportunity for Letitia's eyes to flinch from mine. Then in a winter of endless rain, just when I thought I'd have to crawl back, admit everyone was right, I woke to an email that made my hands shake. An art director from São Paulo, Ana Gabriela, had seen my latest project, a writhing digital map of deforestation moving in real time. She wanted to feature it in a new exhibition, Viceable, Invisible. They'd pay for my travel, they'd pay to license my pieces. When I read it, I let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. I packed my battered bag, bought a ticket, the cheapest bus that left after midnight. The window panes rattled and fogged as we left Curitiba. As the bus pulled out, the city shrank behind me in coils of mist and neon. I whispered goodbye, but no one heard. São Paulo was a beehive, all noise and speed and light. I was one lost point in an endless network, but I was alive in it, feeding off the electric pulse of endless possibility. Ana Gabriela was slight and warm, her handshake firm, her words quick and precise. She walked me through the stark, glass-walled gallery, taking in the walls tattooed with projections, the floor panels murmuring underfoot. "We want people to feel the shape of loss," she said, standing in front of my work. A looping, sinuous animation, data points from the Amazon shifting into wild, blooming colors, but also hope. "Your work finds beauty in what's purely analytical, it makes them look again." Hundreds came that week. I lost count of the conversations, some earnest, some hurried, all curious. Art students, professors, businessmen. Even a couple from the Ministry of Environment who wanted a private showing. Reporters asked for interviews. My inbox exploded. I signed contracts. I was paid. I could finally breathe. Anna connected me with others, artists who only knew the language of code, activists who used my images in speeches, galleries in Lisbon, Berlin, New York. Clients came. I slept in a real bed. I ate well for the first time in years, but there was an itch under my skin that couldn't be scratched by money or acclaim. At night, the soft hum of São Paulo faded against the sharp, sour memory of folding chairs, church hall whispers, my father's cold shoulder, Letitia's averted eyes. I thought about my mother's hands wringing, her uncertain voice. It wasn't just about making it, it was about being seen as worthy. I promised myself I'd go back only when I had proof, something they couldn't ignore, something so obvious it would chain their doubt to the ground. It took 3 years after São Paulo for the world to reach back. The European Future Data Lab reached out, offering not just a major installation, but a feature that would return home. An exhibit in Curitiba's own Oscar Niemeyer Museum, the iconic Eye. My works would fill the main gallery for the annual biennial. At the bottom of the invitation was the name of the exhibition, Desenhar com Dados, local. Curitiba. I read it again and again, my stomach twisted with something that was half terror, half a long-delayed joy. There was nowhere to hide, no city to disappear into. Now everyone would see. I caught an early flight into Curitiba. As the plane dipped below the clouds, the city appeared, red roofs, tangled trees, streets familiar and strange. I checked into a hotel not far from the museum, then spent the day walking Rua ex Vida Novembro, letting memories pierce me. Letitia chasing pigeons near the old clock, the scent of pão de queijo drifting from a bakery, Rodrigo's face glaring from the window of the bar. The morning of the opening, the museum was a blur of spotlights, banners and staff. My name was everywhere, brochures, posters, a bold headline in the Gazeta do Povo, Curitibano Transforma Dados M Art Global. I moved through the final checks, feeling unmoored, like I might lose my grip at any moment. It was dusk by the time the guests began to arrive. I waited behind a column, heart hammering, as the first crowd filtered in, all suits and scarves, chattering in little clusters. I scanned the faces, searching for those who knew me before. Then I saw them, my father, tall and rigid, jaw clenched, my mother, smaller than I remembered, gripping her purse, Letitia, her hair longer now, already clutching her phone. 2 paces behind them was Rodrigo, broad and smug as ever, flanked by others, his wife, his friends from the church. They looked at the paintings, unsure. The tracks in the floor guided them to the biggest installation, a 20-foot-high cascade of colored light shimmering and twisting, data from the city and its forests rendered in pulses and hues. Each touchpoint triggered a real-time visual: crime rates, rainfall, heat, migration, shifting into fractals and forms that spilled across the wall. I stepped forward, lips pressed together. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd be sick. A museum guide spoke into the microphone, her voice echoing through the hall. "This exhibit is the work of Felipe Aranha, a native of our city. What you see here is a transformation, numbers becoming story, data becoming beauty, pain becoming hope." A cluster approached and my father found himself at the front. He stopped, sharp as stone. Light played across his face, highlighting every uncertain crease, every stubborn line of pride. Rodrigo was next, chuckling with forced bravado, but his jokes died in his throat. Even he couldn't mock what he didn't understand. I heard Letitia swallow, then whisper to our mother, "This is Felipe's." She reached out, touching the edges of a display. Her finger left a ripple of gold and green across the projection. My mother let out a noise, half gasp, half prayer. I stepped in front of them then, meeting their uncertain eyes. I looked at my father, the corners of his mouth twitching. There was something there behind the doubts, a question, a plea. "It's all mine," I said, voice low but firm. "All those nights you wondered if I was wasting my life, this is what I was making." My father looked at the projections, unable to speak. My mother touched my elbow, tears wetting her lashes. Rodrigo forced a laugh. "It's really something, man. Didn't think you had it in you." I wanted to rally, to spit back every insult, every cheap sneer. Instead I nodded, letting the anger curl quietly, a distant heat no longer necessary to survive. Letitia finally smiled, eyes bright. "I get it now," she murmured. "It's beautiful, Fee." In that moment, standing in the center of a gallery flooded with the shapes I had dreamed into being, surrounded by the doubters, the skeptics, the people who had shamed me in my own home, I felt the world settle finally, uneasily, into place. I didn't need their approval, not in the old way, but to see them awed, to see their disbelief fall away under the weight of what I had built, was what I'd needed all along. As the guests drifted by, I heard snatches of conversation. From Curitiba, really, amazing what's possible, never saw data like that. Their voices weaved around me, filling spaces once left hollow by rejection. Cameras flashed, reporters pressed in. My family, rooted and uncertain, watched as strangers shook my hand, as curators praised my vision, as children wove their fingers through the projections, laughing. Later, after the crowds faded and the light dimmed, my family lingered, just the four of us. My father took a long breath. He seemed smaller than I remembered, worn around the edges but softer too. "I was wrong," he said, voice rough. "Didn't see it, didn't try." A silence grew between us, thick but fragile. I put a hand on his shoulder, letting the years thin out for a moment. Letitia leaned in, looping her arm around my waist. My mother wiped her eyes, looking at me like she finally saw all of me for the first time. Outside, the Curitiba night was cool and clean. I led them out into the darkness, head high, heart steady, feeling not like a prodigal son but as something else entirely, a seed that had cracked open under ridicule, grown wild and stubborn, and finally come home, ready to take root at last.